Hello everyone. I bet you're watching this video to relax your mind and drift off to sleep. So if you enjoy it, don't hesitate to like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Are you ready? The exciting story begins right here.
In December 2023, Nashville Metro Police arrested a man named Bryson Rivers on charges of aggravated kidnapping of his girlfriend, Lauren Johansson. The charges were filed by Lauren's father, Lance Johansson, who told the police that Rivers kept his daughter hostage and brutally beat her during their vacation in Tennessee. During Rivers' trial, Lance Johansson told the judge if the accused was ever released from jail, he would kill his daughter. And that's exactly what happened when Bryson Rivers got out of jail after 7 months. How was a culprit released on bond able to kill his girlfriend? Why wasn't he being tracked by police? And how did he get so close to Lauren? Watch this video until the very end to find answers to all these questions and discover shocking details about the case of Lauren Johansson. Lauren Johansson was born on the 30th of October in 2021 in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. She was the oldest of the 4 children of Lance and Tamala Johansson. Both of Lauren's parents worked in the medical field, which made Lauren pursue a nursing career after high school. Lauren wasn't only a bright student, but also actively participated in social work, like volunteering at animal shelters. During high school, Lauren Johansson started dating a star football player of her school, Bryson Rivers. The relationship continued even after the school ended, and continued for nearly 5 years. However, Lauren and Bryson weren't a normal couple, as their relationship was marked by trouble and toxicity from the very start. This was mainly because of behavioral issues with Bryson Rivers. People close to the 2 high school sweethearts noticed that Bryson often found it hard to regulate his emotions. He regularly got angry outbursts, which led to frequent arguments with his girlfriend. Bryson was controlling and possessive, and wanted to govern every aspect of Lauren's life. His ideal image of their relationship was that Lauren was completely isolated from her friends and family. But that wasn't it. Bryson blamed Lauren for his emotional instability, and gradually made her believe that his emotional state was her responsibility. Lauren was brainwashed by her boyfriend to the extent that she always went back to him regardless of how abusive or toxic their relationship became. After high school, Lauren Johansson went to the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg to study nursing. In 2023, while in college, Lauren met Nick Bell, a 24-year-old Army aviation veteran who was also studying nursing in the same college and lived next door to Lauren. Contrary to Bryson's toxicity, Nick offered Lauren safety and protection. She gradually opened up to Nick about Bryson and his toxic tendencies. Nick later told the media that once after a trip, Lauren asked him to check if the house was safe. Upon searching, Nick found Bryson hiding underneath Lauren's bed. Not only this, Bryson had nailed all the doors shut so Lauren couldn't leave when she was in. Although Bryson left the house at that time, he didn't stop stalking Lauren and her new boyfriend. As time passed, the love between Lauren and Nick grew, and in August 2023, he asked Lauren to marry him while the couple were on vacation in Miami. Lauren seemed to have finally found a partner who valued and truly loved her, but it soon ended when Bryson Rivers made his way back into her life. After getting back together, Lauren and Bryson took a trip to Tennessee in December 2023. During an outing to a local bar, Bryson accused Lauren of having sex with one of the bartenders. Bryson forcefully got Lauren into the car, drove to a deserted parking lot, and viciously beat her to the point that she almost lost consciousness. He even choked her and threatened that if she tried to leave the car or call for help, she wasn't going to wake up the next morning. While beating her, Bryson told Lauren that he had scheduled marriage counseling for the couple and was extremely furious that she made out with the bartender, which Lauren continuously denied. He even told Lauren that he was going to kill himself after he was done beating her. When the police arrived in the parking lot, they found a car with fogged windows, with Lauren banging on the passenger side window for help. Bryson had beaten Lauren to the extent that she was completely covered in blood when one of the officers opened the car door. Lauren's injuries were so serious that she had to be hospitalized for 2 days. Bryson, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened at all. When he was being arrested, he calmly asked the police officers the reason for his arrest, despite knowing very well that he had just physically assaulted his girlfriend with rocks and a pistol. Bryson Rivers was arrested and taken to a Nashville jail. As for Lauren Johansson, she visited a domestic violence center. Lauren told the authorities that although she carried a gun with her and it was in her bag on the back seat of the car, Bryson Rivers forcefully prevented her from reaching the gun. Her official statement also said the car was in the parking lot for nearly an hour, and she blew up the horn every time a vehicle passed in hopes that someone would come to her rescue. She also told the authorities that Bryson held his forearm against her throat until she got dizzy. A few days after the incident, Lauren accepted a phone call from Bryson and later told the police that she did not want to press charges against her boyfriend. Bryson had once again gotten into Lauren's head and persuaded her to tell the court that she had got injured because she was drunk and hit her head against the car windows. He also told her that he wanted to get back together and hinted at joining the military after getting out of jail. This was to convince Lauren that there was still hope in their relationship and that military service would straighten him and help him with his anger issues. However, Lauren told Bryson that she'd already given her statement to the authorities, and given the circumstances, it was likely that the police would take what she initially said as her official statement. When Lauren expressed her desire not to press charges against her abusive boyfriend, the police told her that they had enough evidence to pursue a case against Bryson on their own. Bryson Rivers was charged with aggravated kidnapping, aggravated stalking, and witness coercion. But this wasn't enough to compel Lauren to stay away from her toxic boyfriend. Later in an interview, Lance Johansson told the media that he never got positive signs from his daughter's relationship with Bryson Rivers, but didn't interfere and respected Lauren's decision. He also shared that after finding out about the true extent of abuse inflicted by Bryson on his daughter, he repeatedly warned Lauren about staying away from her toxic boyfriend. But whenever she did so, Bryson found a way to manipulate her and get back into her life. On Monday, the 18th of December 2023, a preliminary hearing set Bryson's bond at $251,000. Lance Johansson was present at the hearing and told the judge that if Rivers was ever released, it was likely that he would kill his daughter. He told the court that this wasn't the first time Bryson had physically assaulted his daughter, and while the family would get Lauren away from Bryson for a while, he always found a way to get back to her and, again, abused her physically. On March 13, 2024, Bryson Rivers filed a motion in Nashville court, requesting that his bond be reduced. While the Nashville District Attorney's Office strongly opposed the bond reduction request, Judge Cheryl Blackburn approved Bryson's request and reduced his bond from $251,000 to $150,000 on the 3rd of April 2024. What's even more shocking was that the judge reviewed the 11-minute audio from December 2023, when Bryson viciously beat Lauren Johansson. The police also told the court that Lauren had changed her statement after talking to Bryson over the phone, but despite compelling evidence against the accused, the judge reduced the bond. In her new statement, Laura had told the authorities that Bryson Rivers did not assault her and the blood on her body was because she hit herself against the car windows. She even said that it was in fact her who tried to injure Bryson. While Bryson Rivers' bond was reduced, the court's decision came with certain conditions, too. For example, he wasn't allowed to leave Davidson County, Tennessee. He also had to be fitted with a GPS monitor after posting. The order also noted Bryson should be released before 4 p.m., so there was enough time for him to get the GPS tracker company's office and get fitted for his GPS tracker. On May 15, 2024, a motion was filed by Bryson Rivers and his mother to change the conditions of his release so he could go live with his family in Mississippi while a trial date was set. The judge denied this request, and a company named Elite Bonding was approved by the court to post Bryson's bond on the 4th of June 2024. However, the company's owner decided against following the case because he wasn't sure how Bryson was going to live without his family. On the same day, Bryson's assigned parole officer sent a copy of the court order to Tracking Solutions, the GPS tracker company, about Bryson's bond conditions. Bryson's lawyer requested that an email should be sent to the district attorney's office so that the appropriate address for exclusion could be retrieved. An address was also provided to the court by Bryson's attorney where he would be living while waiting for his trial. The court approved 2 different bond companies, On Time Bail Bonding and Brooks Bail Bonding, to post Bryson's bail. Both these companies were to put up $75,000 each. They were required to come to the court and sign the order concerning Bryson Rivers' bail. The court order was 2 pages long and specified all the bonding conditions, including who will pay how much for the bail. The first page of the order dictated that Tracking Solutions, the GPS monitoring company, would fit the GPS monitor on Bryson Rivers. However, it was later revealed that the employee of Brooks Bonding, one of the bond companies, was shown only the second page of the court's order, and therefore the company didn't know that Rivers was to be taken to Tracking Solutions to get a GPS monitor fit on him. After completing all the legal formalities, Bryson Rivers was released on bond from Maximum Correctional Center on Harding Place on Monday, June 24, 2024, despite one of the bail conditions stating that he'd be released before 4 p.m. Bryson was released at 4:05 p.m. Not only this, the Office of the Davidson County Chief Deputy Criminal Court Clerk Julius Sloss also made a mistake when it came to sharing information on the conditions of Bryson's release. The bonding company in the bail also wasn't aware of the full release conditions because they weren't handed over by the clerk's office. The clerk would later claim that knowing the bail conditions is the bonding company's responsibility, and a bonding company should always know beforehand what is being signed. The Chief Deputy Criminal Court Clerk also added that it wasn't the clerk's office's responsibility to make the officials from the bond companies read official documents because people from the bond companies are used to seeing such documents all the time. In Rivers' situation, the accused would normally be released in the custody of a bonding agent. However, because of incomplete information and ineffective communication, Bryson was released from the correctional center on his own. But that wasn't the only mistake the authorities made that day. When a bonding agent finally picked up Bryson Rivers later that day, instead of taking him to Tracking Solutions, the company responsible for fitting a GPS tracker on him, he was taken to the wrong GPS monitoring company. The new monitoring company, Freedom Monitoring Services, was established just 7 days before Bryson Rivers' release and didn't know his full release conditions. This is the reason the company did not know that the court had banned Rivers from traveling outside of Davidson County. But when they became aware of the condition, several days had already passed, and Bryson Rivers had already left Tennessee. While Freedom Monitoring Service did ask Bryson about the location he would be living in Mississippi, they didn't know the address he gave them was, in fact, Lauren Johansson's. Bryson didn't come back to Tennessee until 5 days later on June 29, 2004, because he was told by the GPS monitoring company that there was an issue with the GPS monitor, and he immediately needed to report to the company's office in Nashville. However, he didn't stay in Nashville for long and once again disappeared. He had a hearing at Davidson County Courtroom scheduled for the 2nd of July 2024, but he never showed up to the courts. Moreover, the battery on his GPS tracker also started dying by this point, and the GPS monitoring company last tracked him in Biloxi, Mississippi. When the Freedom Monitoring Services contacted Bryson Rivers' mother about his whereabouts, she told him that she hadn't seen her son recently and didn't know where he was. The authorities, including the GPS tracking company and the bond agents, tried to contact Bryson Rivers. However, they couldn't reach him. In the light of the evidence that Bryson Rivers had been in Mississippi despite being ordered to not leave Davidson County, the court issued an arrest warrant for him. Meanwhile, on June 28, 2024, Lauren's father, Lance Johansson, received a voicemail from the Nashville District Attorney's Office informing him about Bryson Rivers' release and also cautioned him about keeping his daughter safe. This is Bailey calling from the District Attorney's Office in Nashville. Bryson Rivers was released from custody. He was supposed to report straight to the GPS company and be put on a GPS monitor, and he was not to leave Davidson County. But as soon as he was released, he did not report to that GPS monitoring company and has not been heard from. I wanted to make sure Lauren is safe. Lance Johansson didn't hear the voicemail until the 1st of July. As soon as he came to know about the situation, he texted his daughter about her well-being. Although he did get a response from Lauren, Lance Johansson later revealed that the text didn't sound like his daughter and something seemed off. The whole situation came across as a surprise to Lance because, firstly, he was given every assurance that Bryce Rivers would not be released from jail and that Lauren was safe. Secondly, when Bryson was released, Lance didn't know about it for as long as a week. To keep their daughter and other children safe, Lance and Tamala had everyone install the Life 360 app on their cell phones. This app kept all the family members updated about each other's locations and status. On the 2nd of July 2024, at 4 a.m., Lance Johansson received a notification on his cell phone informing him that Lauren's Life 360 app had been turned off. At the time of the incident, Lauren was living with her sister in Hattiesburg. The sister also told her father that when she woke up in the morning, Lauren was gone and the front door of the house was open. Not only this, someone had ripped off the security camera of the house too. Upon knowing that his daughter was missing, Lance Johansson immediately contacted Hattiesburg police and informed them about the situation. When he went to the police station to get an update on the situation, he was shocked to find out the police hadn't done anything to track Lauren. The authorities kept delaying any action on the matter until 3 p.m. on Wednesday, the 3rd of July, when Lance insisted that they should try to locate Lauren's car. The police used OnStar, a vehicle safety feature, to track Lauren's car. The tracking pinged in the Gulfport area of Harrison County, roughly 90 minutes away from where Lauren was living, and the authorities contacted Lance Johansson and informed him about where his daughter's car had been located. Without wasting any time, Lance drove to the location right away. On July 3, 2024, the police found Lauren Johansson's car in Wolf River Cemetery, with Lauren lying dead on the back seat of the car. What was even more shocking to both the law enforcement officials and Lance Johansson was that Lauren's body was wrapped up in sheets and trash bags. It was clear that she had been beaten to death because her face was smashed in. Her eyes were swollen to the extent that she couldn't see anything at the time of her death, and her head had multiple holes in it. The whole body was horrifically mutilated. Lauren had been beaten so viciously that her face and skull became fractured from the rest of her body. When the law enforcement agencies arrived at the scene, a male figure left Lauren's car and ran into the woods nearby. With more than 50 officers, drones, dogs, a helicopter, and other search methods, the police began searching for the man. After more than 6 hours of manhunt, the law enforcement agencies were finally able to get hold of Bryson Rivers and arrest him. Through text messages, the police were able to convince Bryson that he was talking to a friend who was there to get him to a safe location. As soon as Rivers reached the agreed-upon location to be rescued by a supposed friend, he was arrested by police. It was later revealed that both the GPS tracking company and the bond company didn't realize the gravity of the situation until July 1, 2024, when they repeatedly called Bryson Rivers and tried to tell him that he was in violation of his bond terms, and he immediately needed to get back to Nashville or his bond would be revoked. Bryson Rivers finally returned his tracking company's call around midnight, but he told them that he wasn't going to show up for the hearing, and that is exactly what happened. New evidence in the case also revealed that Lauren Johnson was killed by Bryson Rivers in Forest County and not Harrison County, where she was living at the of her murder. After finding new evidence in the case and establishing that the crime was committed in Forest County, Bryson Rivers was handed over to the Forest County Police Department. After being relocated from Harrison County, Bryson Rivers made his first court appearance in Forest County Court on the 26th of July 2024. In addition to the charges he was facing in relation to his physical assault of Lauren Johansson in December 2023, new charges were added to his case. These included first-degree murder and denial of his bond. He was also charged with tampering with evidence and grand larceny. The prosecutors told the court that they believed that Lauren Johansson was killed by Bryson Rivers near her residence in Forest County, and that her body was moved across the county lines to Harrison County. The preliminary trial date of Bryson Rivers was set for 1:30 p.m. on the 31st of July at the Gulfport Justice Court in Harrison County, and his bond was set at $1 million. On August 23, 2024, Bryson Rivers appeared in the court of Judge Gay Polk Payton, and his lawyer requested for a bond. However, the request was denied. Daniel Benoit, investigator for the Forest County Sheriff's Department, gave an update about the investigation and shared important updates. According to Benoit, his department found video footage from the week when Bryson Rivers was released on bond. The footage showed that Lauren Johansson and Bryson Rivers voluntarily visited a hotel together. The phone records submitted to the court showed that on the 2nd of July, Bryson Rivers tried to contact Lauren Johansson 126 times. Benoit told the court that Bryson consistently asked Lauren about her whereabouts. However, she never responded to her calls or messages. Between July 1st and July 2nd, Bryson Rivers also visited his mother's house in McHenry. According to the Forest Police Department, on July 2nd at 2:15 a.m., he sent a message to his friend and asked him to drive him to Hattiesburg. Security cameras in the neighborhood where Lauren Johansson was living in Hattiesburg spotted Bryson Rivers in the early morning hours of the 2nd of July. Due to the recent events, Lauren Johansson had installed 11 cameras at her residence. However, when she went missing and the police officers searched her home, they found that 5 of the cameras were stolen. Rivers was captured in the security cameras at 3:58 a.m. and could be seen heading towards Lauren's house. At the time, there were 3 people in the house, which included Lauren Johansson herself, her sister, and a friend named J.C. Wilson. Lance Johansson told the media that Lauren had likely called J.C. Wilson to her house for her protection because he had already told her daughter that Bryson Rivers was out of jail and she should be safe. Security footage showed Bryson Rivers walking from Lauren's house around 5:11 a.m. for a brief moment before running back in. When Rivers left the house for the second time, he wasn't wearing a shirt. Lauren Johansson's car left her house at 5:51 a.m., with the police believing that Lauren was alive at the time. The GPS data showed that Bryson drove around Hattiesburg, but he didn't take direct routes. During this time, several traffic cameras captured the car on the road, but he was the only person seen inside the vehicle. Bryson Rivers first drove downtown, then to Chain Park. He then went to Petal River Park and stayed there for 32 minutes. On October 9, 2024, a 6-judge panel declared that the bond companies that were responsible for bailing Bryson Rivers out of the correctional facility made serious errors. Although the court declared that the bond companies didn't break any laws, it did say that there were multiple cases of negligence by multiple parties involved in the Bryson Rivers case that eventually led to the death of Lauren Johansson. Bryson Rivers remains in Forest County Police Department's custody, while a grand jury hears his case and decides his fate. On March 22, 2015, 29-year-old Denise Huskins and her 30-year-old boyfriend Aaron Quinn were staying the night at Aaron's house in Vallejo, California, approximately 30 miles north of San Francisco. The couple were both physical therapists at a local hospital. However, in the early morning of March 23rd, something terrifying unfolded for the couple. Around 1:53 p.m. on March 23rd, Aaron contacted the Vallejo Police Department to report that Denise had been abducted. The police were immediately dispatched to the scene and began an extensive search for Denise. Officers with the Vallejo Police Department utilized search and rescue dogs and dive teams as they scoured the entire city for the missing woman. As the search for Denise continued, Aaron, Denise's boyfriend, was interviewed by detectives and FBI agents in an undisclosed location. During their interrogation, Aaron provided crucial details about the events leading up to and following the abduction. He and Denise were woken up in the middle of the night by a bright beam of light shining in their face. The light was followed by a vibrating noise that Aaron attributed to a stun gun. Aaron claimed that he heard a male voice demanding they lie face down on the bed. As he and Denise complied, Aaron explained to the detectives that the intruder blindfolded him using swim goggles, but they had been blacked out with dark tape, making it impossible to see anything. The male intruder then instructed Denise to bind Aaron's wrists with zip ties. The intruder placed Aaron in a closet and covered his ears with headphones, playing a pre-recorded message before calming music. This message instructed Aaron to follow specific instructions and warned him not to interfere with the abductor's plans. During the message, the voice said that both occupants needed to comply or would be hurt by an electric shock or cuts to their faces. Before leaving, the intruder obtained Aaron's financial account information and passwords. Aaron later recounted to the detectives that the intruder placed him on the couch and told him that the professional group was monitoring him via webcam. After being left alone, Aaron said he passed out on the sofa but eventually woke up. Aaron immediately realized that the intruder had stolen his laptop, car, and most importantly, Denise. Panic began to set in as Aaron realized that she was missing. He checked his phone and discovered a chilling voicemail from the kidnapper demanding money in return for her safe return. The intruder threatened Aaron, warning him to tell anyone who asked that he wanted the money to purchase a ski boat. A search for Denise began immediately. Officers with the Vallejo Police Department launched a massive investigation. The spokesperson for the department revealed that the detectives were treating the case as a kidnapping for ransom. As the investigation continued, the detectives involved in the case began to question certain aspects of Aaron's story, such as the details of the intruder's actions, the pre-recorded message, and the delay in reporting Denise missing. The detectives believed that Aaron's account of the incident seemed too elaborate and wondered whether he had played a role in Denise's disappearance. Aaron's mother, who spoke to Dateline, revealed that the detectives treated her son more like a suspect than a victim. They polygraphed him 5 times, placed him in a prison jumpsuit, and provided minimal food and water as they held him for hours in the interrogation room. These tactics were perceived as an attempt to coerce a confession rather than a determined effort to locate Denise. Despite Aaron's claims that an intruder had abducted Denise, the lack of evidence and discrepancies in his story led the detectives to consider alternative possibilities. They believed that Aaron might have harmed Denise and then concocted the story of the intruder to cover his tracks. However, without concrete evidence, they were unable to prove this theory definitively. Just over 30 hours after Denise vanished, reporter Henry Lee received an email with an audio file attached. This file, claiming to be a proof-of-life message from Denise, sparked a media frenzy and left investigators with questions. When Henry Lee opened the audio file and heard a female voice, it was undeniably Denise's. In the recording, Denise spoke about the day's biggest news. A German airliner had crashed in the Alps, resulting in the loss of 150 lives. Denise also mentioned her first concert, where she watched Blink-182 in Bad Religion with her friend and her friend's mom. On the surface, this recording seemed to be a clear indicator of Denise's survival. By mentioning current events and specific details of her own life, Denise appeared to confirm that she was aware of her surroundings and had the means to communicate with the outside world. However, reporter Henry Lee couldn't help but harbor doubts. One aspect that caught Henry Lee's attention was Denise's voice. He noticed something out of the ordinary. It lacked any signs of fear or distress commonly associated with someone who had been abducted. Instead, Denise's tone seemed casual, as if she were talking to a friend over coffee. This discrepancy raised suspicions that this recording may have been staged or altered in some way. As news of Denise's abduction spread, her friends heard the recording and were deeply worried about her safety. Despite the message claiming that she was alive, her loved ones were in the dark about the specific circumstances surrounding her disappearance. All they had to go by was her voice on the recording. When Dateline interviewed Denise's friends, they expressed no surprise at the calmness evident in her recording. They claimed that they had been with Denise at the Boston Marathon in 2013 when a terrorist attack occurred. It was Denise who remained composed and took charge, leading herself and her friends to safety. Approximately 45 hours after Denise was first reported missing, the Vallejo Police Department announced that she had been located in Huntington Beach, California, approximately 400 miles south of Vallejo where she had last been seen. This discovery raised suspicions among detectives, as Denise was raised in Huntington Beach. The detectives also knew that no ransom demands had been received, which left them questioning why her abductor had ultimately let her go. According to the spokesperson for the Vallejo Police Department, Denise spoke to the police in Huntington Beach after she said the intruder let her go. However, the Vallejo detectives stated that Denise refused to talk to them. The FBI became involved and offered a plan to aid Denise and Aaron in their cooperation. Despite this offer, the spokesperson claimed that Denise and Aaron still refused to engage with the Vallejo police directly. The Vallejo Police Department spokesperson said that Aaron Quinn's statement about the intruder and Denise's abduction was such an incredible story that the detectives had a hard time believing it. Upon further investigation, the detectives could not substantiate Aaron's claims. This spokesperson boldly stated that Aaron and Denise had plundered valuable resources away from the community while instilling fear in residents. If anything, the spokesperson argued that Aaron and Denise owed the community an apology. Detectives involved in the case felt that there was significant evidence indicating that Aaron and Denise fabricated the intruder and abduction. Aaron's initial story to the detectives stated that he gave the intruder his credit card information, but further investigation revealed that no one attempted to access his bank accounts. Additionally, Aaron claimed that intruder had called him a few times from a blocked number, yet the detectives believed that Aaron may have pre-programmed another phone to call his cell to fool them. One day after the Vallejo Police Department held their press conference condemning Aaron and Denise, Denise visited the Vallejo Police Department and spoke to the detectives. During her interview, Denise revealed that in addition to being kidnapped, she'd also been sexually assaulted. This revelation shocked the detectives, who had initially dismissed Denise's claims as a hoax. Denise's case took a twist when a reporter named Henry Lee received an email that seemed to provide evidence of Denise's innocence. This email, purportedly written by the person who claimed to have abducted Denise, challenged the accusations against her. The email writer expressed anger at the suggestion that Denise had fabricated her story. They emphasized that they would not stand by and watch the life of a good person be ruined by false accusations. To support their claims, the writer attached 2 images to the email. In the first image, there was a water gun painted black with a flashlight attached to it. While this might seem innocent, the water gun could resemble a real weapon in the darkness. The second image depicted a bedroom with cardboard on the windows. According to the writer, this is the room where they held Denise during her abduction. These images, if genuine, potentially added credibility to the writer's statements. However, without additional evidence or verification, their authenticity remained in question. Denise Huskin's abduction case remained shrouded in controversy, with many people questioning the truth behind Denise's claims. News of Denise's abduction and return hit the media like a firestorm. Reporters dubbed the event the Gone Girl case due to its resemblance to the novel and movie, which were centered around a woman who faked her disappearance to frame her husband for murder. The insinuation that Denise and Aaron had lied about the break-in and kidnapping infuriated their loved ones. Comparisons were drawn between the fictional case in Gone Girl and the real abduction of Denise Huskins. The media focused on similarities between the characters in the plot, fueling speculation and conspiracy theories. This comparison added to the intrigue and captivated the public's attention, adding fuel to the media frenzy. Furthermore, Denise and Aaron were subjected to harassment and online abuse. Trolls and anonymous individuals targeted them on social media, sharing their personal information and spreading misinformation. Their reputations became tarnished and their personal lives were invaded. The impact of online harassment on individuals is severe and long-lasting, further exacerbating the emotional toll of the abduction on the couple. Denise's friends were deeply disturbed by these accusations. They knew Denise as a person of honesty and integrity, and they could not bear to see their friend being portrayed as a liar to the world. Those who loved Denise believed that her abduction was a genuine event, and they stood unwaveringly by her side. The media frenzy surrounding the case intensified, and Denise and Aaron found themselves at the center of a media storm. They were subjected to intense scrutiny and speculation, with many questioning their motives. Denise and Aaron faced immense pressure. However, on June 5, 2015, just months after Denise's abduction, a similar crime rocked Dublin, California. This incident would provide crucial evidence contradicting the hoax accusations in Denise's case. Around 3 a.m., an intruder broke into a home in Dublin. The homeowner, awoken by the commotion, found himself face to face with the intruder. The intruder shone a flashlight in his eyes, uttering chilling words. He informed the homeowner that he had kidnapped his 22-year-old daughter. This homeowner and his wife, understandably terrified, found themselves in a struggle for their lives. Sensing an opportunity to escape, the wife ran to retrieve the cell phone. Her husband, displaying quick thinking, yelled to his wife, "Get the gun." This command caught the intruder off guard, and he quickly fled the scene. The husband and wife's daughter were in the bedroom, safe. When the police arrived at the scene, they found several items the intruder had left behind, including a cell phone. The detectives managed to trace the phone found at the Dublin crime scene to 38-year-old Matthew Mueller. After obtaining a search warrant for Matthew Mueller's arrest, officers headed to the family cabin in South Lake Tahoe, where they believed he was hiding. Upon arrival in South Lake Tahoe, officers arrested Matthew and took him into custody. The subsequent search of Matthew's home revealed several crucial pieces of evidence. First, investigators discovered a BB gun that matched the description provided by Denise's abductor. Additionally, investigators found a super soaker painted black and equipped with a flashlight and laser pointer, the same one depicted in an image sent to reporter Henry Lee by the kidnapper. Furthermore, investigators stumbled upon a room in Matthew's cabin that bore a striking resemblance to the one described by Denise's abductor to Henry Lee. The windows were boarded up and the room appeared secluded. In addition to the BB gun and super soaker, investigators recovered a pair of swim goggles with lenses covered by black tape. Intriguingly, a long blonde hair was attached to the tape. This hair sample was sent to the California State Crime Lab for analysis, and the results came back as a match for Denise. This revelation undermined the hoax theory and raised suspicions that Matthew was involved. Furthermore, investigators conducted a thorough search of Matthew's car, finding a number of items of interest. A forensic examination of his GPS navigation system revealed that one of the addresses programmed into the GPS was the location near Huntington Beach, where Denise claimed her abductor had left her. This discovery further strengthened the case against Matthew and suggested that Denise's abduction was more than just a fabrication. Matthew was eventually arrested and charged with battery, robbery, and assault in relation to the break-in that occurred in Dublin, California several months before the abduction. However, on July 13, 2015, additional charges were brought against him, including kidnapping in connection with Denise's case. As the investigation continued, detectives delved deeper into Matthew's background. They discovered he had enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, where he played the trumpet for the United States Marine Band. Matthew distinguished himself as a decorated Marine during his service, earning several service medals and ribbons and being promoted to sergeant. Despite Matthew never having experienced combat, he developed severe mental health struggles that he attributed to what he referred as the Gulf War syndrome. As a result, he asked to be relieved from his duties as a police officer. His request was granted, and he received an honorable discharge. Following his graduation from Pomona College in 2003, Matthew moved to Boston and started at Harvard Law School. During his time there, he became passionate about working with immigrants and refugees. As a result, he remained at Harvard as a research assistant in the university's Immigration and Refugee Clinic. After a few years on the East Coast, Matthew grew tired of life in Boston. In 2019, he relocated to Silicon Valley, where he passed the California bar exam. However, he never registered for the actual bar. Despite his lack of registration, Matthew managed to find employment at several immigration law firms. He also founded a non-profit organization that provided pro bono services to immigrants with mental illness. In 2013, Matthew's law license was suspended due to his inability to resolve outstanding dues owed to the California Bar Association. During his time at Harvard University, Matthew was diagnosed with major depression with signs of mania. His symptoms worsened over time, leading to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Additionally, Matthew developed paranoid delusions, becoming convinced that the government was wiretapping his phone and hacking his computer due to his suspected ties with immigrant clients that the government deemed as terrorists. In early 2015, Matthew relocated to a cabin in South Lake Tahoe, which his family had owned. He became a recluse, rarely sleeping and spending most of his time in a daze watching Batman movies. Matthew's paranoia intensified, and he became increasingly suspicious of those around him. As spring approached, Matthew began experiencing psychotic episodes. During these episodes, he often wore a wetsuit, creating tools from swim goggles and super soakers, and engaged in bizarre behavior. Matthew's psychosis led him to develop a Robin Hood-like plan where he would kidnap evil wealthy people and demand a ransom in exchange for their release. This act was morally justified to him due to his distorted perception of reality. In September 2016, Matthew pleaded guilty to 1 count of kidnapping and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. He faced additional state charges of kidnapping, burglary, robbery, and 2 counts of sexual assault by force. Denise found herself compelled to take the stand as a witness during one of Matthew Mueller's trials. Her testimony was intense, as she described in detail the harrowing experience she'd endured at the hands of the accused. Acting as his own attorney, Matthew Mueller graced the courtroom in a suit while shackled. However, what stood out the most during this testimony was Denise's remarkable composure as she faced her attacker head-on. As Denise began her testimony, she addressed the jurors, her voice unwavering. She explained how she had initially hesitated to come forward with her account of the sexual assault, fearing that others would not believe her. However, she pressed on, determined to seek justice for the crimes committed against her. Throughout her testimony, Denise's unwavering determination was on display. She described how she refused to let Matthew see her cry or succumb to hysteria. Instead, she closed her eyes and imagined being with her boyfriend during the assault. This mental imagery provided her with a sense of comfort and strength, enabling her to persevere through the difficult memories of her testimony. Matthew Mueller, on the other hand, did not cross-examine Denise. He chose to let her testimony stand without challenging or refuting any aspects of her story. Matthew was deemed incompetent to stand trial for the state charges. However, in November 2022, he was declared mentally fit to stand trial and pleaded guilty to those charges. Netflix's recent release of American Nightmare, a documentary featuring Denise Huskins, has provided a comprehensive account of the assault and the abduction she suffered. Each episode of American Nightmare is 45 minutes long and was released on January 17, 2024. Denise, a brave and determined survivor, recounts her harrowing tale, detailing the 2 sexual assaults she endured at the hands of her abductor. During the documentary, Denise provides a detailed account of her experiences. She revealed how the assailant, who claimed to be a military veteran, sexually assaulted her twice. Denise claimed that she told her abductor she had been sexually abused as a child, hoping it would deter him from repeating the offense. However, her hopes were shattered when he assaulted her again. The assault informed Denise that he had recorded both assaults and would release the footage if she went to the police. This terrifying ultimatum left Denise fearing for her safety and the safety of her loved ones. As a result, she initially refrained from disclosing her sexual assault to the detectives, fearing that she may put herself, her boyfriend Aaron, and her family in further danger. In September 2015, Aaron Quinn and Denise Huskins filed a lawsuit against the city of Vallejo, seeking compensation for their false imprisonment, defamation, and false arrest, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The couple alleged that the police department destroyed their reputations through an outrageous, completely unprofessional, and wholly unfounded claim of disparagement. According to People magazine, Aaron and Denise settled with Vallejo officials in 2018 for $2.5 million. Vallejo city representatives admitted that the case was not handled as sensitively as it should have been, and they offered an apology to the couple. The Vallejo Police Department eventually recognized their mistake and issued an apology to Aaron and Denise as well. In 2021, Denise and Aaron wrote a book about their ordeal, shedding light on their experiences and highlighting the challenges they faced in the aftermath of the abduction. The book served as a powerful tool to advocate for change and highlight the importance of victim support. Denise and Aaron are now proud parents to 2 daughters, born in 2020 and 2022. Denise has prioritized instilling a strong sense of self-worth in her daughters and never letting anyone dictate their worth. Aaron echoed these sentiments, expressing his hope that his daughters will grow up to be like their mother. Despite the challenges they faced, Denise and Aaron have shown incredible strength and resilience. Their story serves as a powerful testament to the power of love and determination in the face of adversity. Despite the passage of time, Denise and Aaron are still puzzled by the reason behind Matthew's actions. The documentary reveals that Matthew's original intent was not to kidnap Denise, but rather to abduct Aaron's former fiancée, Andrea. However, it remains unexplained why Matthew specifically targeted Andrea. Denise and Aaron share their experiences with People magazine, expressing their frustration with the lack of answers surrounding Matthew's motives. Aaron stated that, like many other victims and survivors, they often encountered situations where definitive answers may not surface. He emphasized the importance of moving forward by focusing on what truly matters, such as their children and work. Aaron emphasized that getting stuck on finding answers could be detrimental to the healing process. He and Denise recognized that they may not receive a definitive explanation as to why Matthew targeted them. Despite the lack of closure, they continue to move forward, prioritizing their well-being and the well-being of their children. Denise and Aaron's focus remains on moving forward and rebuilding their lives, regardless of the reasons behind Matthew's actions. What happened during Denise Huskin's abduction case serves as a stark reminder of the potential consequences when hasty judgments are made without sufficient evidence. The Vallejo Police Department's initial dismissal of the case as a hoax undermined the victim's credibility and hindered the investigation process. This incident underscores the importance of due process and the need to thoroughly investigate all leads before dismissing them as false or fabricated. By doing so, law enforcement agencies can ensure that all potential victims receive the attention and support they deserve. Matthew Muller is currently incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institution, FCI, in Tucson, Arizona. He is serving a 31-year state sentence that will run concurrently with a 40-year federal sentence. Concurrent sentences refer to multiple sentences being served at the same time, but they do not merge into a single sentence. In Muller's case, both his state and federal sentences will run simultaneously. According to the court records, Matthew Muller's release date is July 8, 2049. This date means he is expected to complete his state and federal sentences and be released from prison that day. However, it is important to note that this date is subject to change and can be affected by various factors, including good behavior, participation in rehabilitation programs, and any changes in sentencing laws or regulations. Kendra Hatcher was born in a small town outside of Chicago, Illinois. From a young age, she exhibited a nurturing and caring nature. Her parents instilled in her the importance of helping others and making a difference. During college, Kendra developed a passion for dentistry and decided to focus on podiatrics. Her ability to connect with young people made her a natural choice as a podiatric dentist. She was drawn to working with children and helping them improve their oral health. In 2015, at just 35 years old, Kendra landed her dream job at a dental practice in Dallas, Texas, in a low-income community. This dental office was dedicated to community outreach and ensuring the residents of the area had the best care. With a passion for helping, Kendra quickly established a rapport with her patients. Kendra was an eligible bachelorette, so it came as no surprise that she quickly captured the heart of Dr. Ricardo Ricky Penagua, a dermatology resident. Ricky, originally hailing from California, fell hard for Kendra, and she reciprocated his feelings. With only 4 months of dating, their connection was so strong that they began discussing moving in together and planning a wedding. Those who loved Kendra were thrilled for her. They hadn't seen her this excited in a long time. Life seemed to be on an upward trend for Kendra ever since she moved to Dallas at the start of the year. In September, Kendra and Ricky had planned a romantic beach getaway to Cancun. However, this would never come to pass. Little did Kendra know that her happiness would be short-lived. On September 2, 2015, Kendra was driving home from her job as a receptionist at a local hospital. While on her way, she was engaged in a text message conversation with Ricky, who was waiting at her apartment. They were excitedly discussing their upcoming trip to Cancun, scheduled for the following day. Ricky told Kendra that he was going out to grab a bite to eat and asked her to let him know when she arrived home. Around the same time, Hashim, a young man living in the same apartment complex as Kendra, was walking to his car in the parking garage with his friend. As they approached the parking area, he heard a commotion that echoed through the floor. Hashim and his friend paused for a moment, startled by the intense sound of screaming and a series of pop noises that sounded like gunshots. Suddenly, a black Jeep Cherokee screeched past Hashim, shocking him and his friend. Scared, Hashim and his friend got into their car and followed the Jeep out of the parking garage. As they exited the garage, Hashim noticed a body lying on the ground next to a white Toyota Camry. When Hashim made it to the street, he pulled over and called 911 and told them he saw a woman lying on the ground with blood coming from her neck. Police officers and paramedics arrived at the scene to find the woman already dead. After carefully surveying the area, officers ran the victim's vehicle number, and it belonged to Dr. Kendra Hatcher. Officers retrieved Kendra's driver's license photo from the database to confirm the victim's identity. The resemblance was undeniable, and the officers concluded that Kendra was the victim. As the parking lot was designated as the crime scene, Ricky, who had been incessantly texting and phoning Kendra but receiving no response, rapidly grew concerned. One of the homicide detectives approached him. Ricky identified himself as Kendra's boyfriend. The detective then informed Ricky that Kendra had tragically passed away. Initially, Ricky's reaction seemed to the detective to be genuine. However, because he was Kendra's boyfriend and was present at the scene of the crime, he had no choice but to investigate further and determine his involvement. Ricky was taken into custody and brought to the nearby police station for questioning. Meanwhile, a team of crime scene investigators arrived on the scene in the parking garage to begin their examination of the body and gather evidence. Upon their arrival, they quickly noticed that Kendra had been shot through the upper part of the back of her head and exited through her chin. Additionally, the presence of gunshot residue on Kendra's hands suggested the possibility that she had her hands positioned behind her head at the time of the incident. Based on the evidence found at the crime scene, the detectives believed that whoever shot Kendra was standing over her and executed her. Investigators also found a shell casing from a .40 caliber weapon. At the crime scene, investigators stumbled upon a magazine from a handgun. This discovery led detectives to believe that the shooter, in a moment of haste, may have accidentally hit the release on the gun, causing the magazine to pop out. Upon examination, it was found that the magazine did not contain any DNA or prints that could help identify a suspect. The crime scene provided several crucial clues, but one item stood out. Kendra's purse was missing. This absence led detectives to believe that the motivation behind her murder may have been a robbery gone wrong. With security cameras in various parking garage areas, the detectives sought access to the footage from the apartment complex management. As the detectives waited for the CCTV footage to be reviewed, they interviewed Ricky at the police station. Throughout the interview, Ricky appeared shocked and disoriented. Despite the lack of evidence suggesting Ricky's involvement in Kendra's shooting, the detectives couldn't rule him out as a suspect. However, at the end of the interview, detectives released Ricky, as they did not have sufficient evidence to charge him. When the security camera footage from the garage came in, the detectives were confronted with a series of chilling events. The video showed that at 7:15 p.m. on September 2nd, a black Jeep Cherokee followed a resident through the parking garage and parked in a spot. About 20 minutes later, at 7:42 p.m., a white Toyota Camry pulled into the garage. As Kendra pulled into her designated parking spot, the suspect left the Jeep and walked out of frame, heading in the direction of Kendra's car. The Jeep abruptly reversed and the suspect walked back into the vehicle, entering the passenger side. Then the Jeep sped out of the parking garage. Because the footage was grainy, the detectives could not make out any features on the shooter or the license plate number on the Jeep. However, one crucial piece of information came to light during the review of the security camera footage. The Jeep driver, a woman, was seen on one of the cameras as she exited the garage. One of the detectives took a still image of the woman's face and released a widely publicized picture. This photograph was paired with a picture of the black Jeep Cherokee. 2 days after Kendra's death, Jose Ortiz contacted the police and said he wanted to speak to the detectives working on the case. Jose agreed to meet with the detectives at the police station. During their meeting, Jose informed the detectives that the Jeep seen on the news belonged to him. He recognized the characteristics of the vehicle, such as the customized rims and bumper trim, which made him confident that it was indeed his car. However, Jose denied any involvement in the crime. He expressed a strong desire to clear his name and stated that he had loaned his Jeep to his friend, Brenda Delgado, on September 2nd. Jose claimed that there was no way Brenda was the driver of the vehicle, because at the time of Kendra's murder, he and Brenda had been eating dinner at Chili's. Jose revealed that Brenda had threatened him after he confronted her about the fact that his Jeep, which he had let her use, had been on the news and involved in a crime. Brenda had told him to leave the police out of the issue, or else there might be need for authorities to question his immigration status. Furthermore, Brenda had offered to pay for the Jeep to be painted, so it didn't match the car the police were looking for. This revelation piqued the detectives' interest, as they became increasingly convinced that Brenda may have valuable information about Kendra's murder. That same day, September 4th, the detectives called Brenda Delgado and asked her to come to the police department for an interview to learn more about her. Through the search, they discovered that Brenda had immigrated from Mexico to Dallas as a little girl. Those who knew Brenda described her as quiet and reserved, yet they always noticed an upbeat energy about her. At the time of the murder, Brenda was 33 years old and was diligently working towards obtaining her certification as a dental hygienist. Her professors at the dental hygienist school spoke highly of her and praised her ambition and drive. They believed she had great potential and a bright future in the field. When asked if she knew the victim, Brenda denied having any knowledge of who Kendra was. Furthermore, she claimed to have spent the evening of September 2nd with her boyfriend Jose at Chili's restaurant. To support her alibi, Brenda presented the detectives with a receipt from Chili's as proof of her whereabouts that night. However, the detectives found certain aspects of Brenda's story suspicious. The fact that Brenda had the receipt from the dinner 2 nights earlier raised a red flag. They believed it was unusual for someone to have such an old receipt readily available. Brenda inquired as to why her name had surfaced as a potential suspect. The detectives replied that Jose Ortez had come forward and stated that Brenda had borrowed his Jeep. However, according to Brenda, her friend Crystal Cortez had borrowed the Jeep, not her. She provided the detective with Crystal's phone number and suggested they call her in for an interview. During the investigation, Crystal Cortez was interviewed in the interrogation room, and Brenda Delgado was in the other. Crystal admitted to driving the black Jeep Cherokee seen on the CCTV footage on the day and time of Kendra's murder. She stated that she and her son wanted to go to the park, and on their way there, a man suddenly jumped into the back seat of the Jeep. Crystal recalled how the man pulled a gun out and pointed it directly at her head. Terrified for herself and her child, she begged the man not to harm them. However, her pleas were brushed aside. The man ordered Crystal to drive, threatening her if she did not comply. With the gun still held to her head, Crystal reluctantly followed the man's instructions, complying with his demands. They made their way to the apartment parking garage, where Crystal tailgated a resident's car and entered a little after 7 p.m. Then, she pulled into a spot and waited. Just then, a white car drove by, and the man emerged. Crystal heard gunshots, and she feared that the man had shot someone. The man returned and told her to leave. Crystal complied, driving the man to an area in downtown Dallas before dropping him off and leaving her and her son alone. In the video, Crystal was seen driving the Jeep into the parking garage, seemingly on the morning of the murder. However, it was evident that her son was not accompanying her, contradicting her story. The detectives were convinced that Crystal's account was false and pressed her for further details. As the conversation continued, the detectives questioned Crystal's claim that she was forced to drive to the apartment complex at gunpoint. They asked why she didn't attempt to escape or seek help during the encounter. The CCTV footage provided compelling evidence that Crystal had been waiting for the suspect to return to the Jeep before leaving. This evidence raised suspicions about the true nature of the incident. Faced with the mounting evidence and the detectives' persistent questioning, Crystal eventually confessed to the planned attack on Kendra. However, she insisted that she didn't know the man with her possessed a gun. She claimed that they had only intended to rob Kendra, not harm her. According to Crystal, Kendra did not willingly hand her bag over, which led to an altercation and, ultimately, the man shooting her. Crystal said that after the shooting, the man returned to the Jeep and told her not to tell anyone about the incident or he would kill her. Crystal claimed that her friend Brenda Delgado had come up with the idea. The detectives pressed Crystal for more information, seeking to understand the connection between Brenda and Kendra. She divulged that she believed Kendra and Brenda were interested in the same man. This revelation raised interesting questions about the nature of their relationship and whether it could have played a role in the murder. During the investigation, the detectives discovered that Ricky had been in a relationship with Brenda Delgado for 2.5 years. The couple ended their relationship in June 2014. They decided to give it another shot by December of the same year. However, this attempt proved short-lived, as they broke up for good in February 2015. Just weeks after breaking up with Brenda, Ricky met Brenda again and quickly developed feelings for her. He moved quickly, updating his profile picture on Facebook to include himself and Kendra. This sudden change set off alarms for Brenda, who felt threatened by their new relationship. Crystal alleged that Brenda had approached her with an offer to commit a robbery. According to Crystal, Brenda claimed she wanted to steal Kendra's purse and promised to pay her $500 in return for her involvement. However, Crystal insisted that the intention was never to murder Kendra, but rather to rob her. The detectives, suspicious of Crystal's claims, decided to confront Brenda in a separate interrogation room. They informed Brenda that they had discovered that she had been in a romantic relationship with Kendra's boyfriend, which Brenda denied having any knowledge about. Despite their suspicions, Brenda continued to insist that she had no involvement in Kendra's murder. With the woman's consent, the detectives thoroughly searched Brenda's and Crystal's cell phones. They discovered that the two had met for lunch on the day Kendra was killed. Additionally, they saw that Brenda had given Crystal the promised $500 in cash. Further investigation revealed a photograph on Crystal's phone taken after the payment was made. This photo shows Crystal holding the money in the shape of a heart. What disturbed the detectives was that Crystal did not show any signs of being upset or scared. Instead, she appeared to revel in the situation. The detectives returned to Crystal's interrogation room, where they questioned her about the selfie they had found on her phone. They asked why she appeared to be so happy and carefree if she was so disturbed by Kendra's death, as she had claimed earlier. The detectives pressed further, questioning Crystal on the identity of the man who shot Kendra. Crystal hesitantly revealed that she believed the shooter's name was Lamar. She claimed to have met Lamar at a bar downtown Dallas 1 month earlier. According to Crystal, Lamar drove a blue Chrysler Sebring. However, the detectives remained unsure about Crystal's truthfulness regarding the shooter's identity. They believed Crystal may have given a false name to protect the real culprit. Therefore, they decided to investigate Crystal's claim further by contacting Lamar and obtaining his phone number. Crystal gave the detectives Lamar's phone number, which they promptly handed to the investigation team. After Crystal's interrogation, she was arrested as she admitted to receiving payment from Brenda to be a getaway driver. However, the detectives did not have enough evidence to place Brenda under arrest for murder. Because Brenda had unpaid traffic tickets, the detectives proceeded to arrest Brenda for that and take her into custody, while they determined the next steps in their investigation. The detectives, eager to find the perpetrator, began searching for an individual named Lamar in their criminal records database. However, to their disappointment, they found no information suggesting any connection between Lamar and the crime. Determined to uncover the shooter's true name, the detective team sought assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. With their assistance, the detectives tracked down the phone number Crystal had given them, claiming it belonged to the shooter. Upon conducting surveillance on the home connected to the phone number, the officers observed a blue Chrysler Sebring parked in the driveway. This description matched the vehicle Crystal had claimed the shooter owned. On September 30th, nearly 1 month after Kendra's murder, a man was observed exiting the house. He got into the Chrysler Sebring and pulled out from the driveway. The officers followed the car to a nearby parking lot, where the FBI made direct contact with the driver. Agents from the FBI identified the driver of the blue Sebring as 31-year-old Christopher Love. Upon apprehending Christopher, his vehicle was transferred to the auto impound lot for processing. During the search of Christopher's car, the crime scene investigators discovered a .40 caliber firearm, the same caliber used to shoot and kill Kendra. This discovery prompted the detectives to rush to the firearm lab to conduct a fire test. Within 1 hour, the results of the test confirmed that the shell casing found at the crime scene was indeed a match for Christopher's gun. The implications of this discovery were significant, as it directly linked Christopher to the shooting. With evidence mounting against him, Christopher was transported to the police station, where the detectives were waiting to interview him. Upon arrival, Christopher was confronted with a picture of the gun that was found in his car. To the surprise of the detectives, Christopher admitted to owning the gun, but denied being the person responsible for shooting Kendra. Christopher initially claimed that Crystal was the one who fatally shot Kendra. However, the detectives discovered that Crystal had been driving the Jeep at the time of Kendra's death, based on the CCTV footage. Further investigation revealed that Brenda, another suspect, had offered Christopher compensation in the form of drugs if he would assist in the crime. Christopher claimed that Brenda had told him that Kendra had stolen drugs from her house and also had a connection to a drug cartel. However, when confronted by the detectives, they revealed that Kendra had no drug connections and was a beloved children's dentist. Based on the new information, Christopher was charged with capital murder and placed in the Dallas County Jail. Brenda, on the other hand, was held in custody initially. However, she eventually paid the fine for her parking ticket on September 5th and was released from custody. When Brenda was released from custody, she wasted no time in fleeing the country. She boarded a bus and headed to the Mexican border, hoping to evade capture. However, the authorities were vigilant in their search for Brenda and swiftly took action. The detectives contacted the media, issuing a public alert that Brenda was wanted for capital murder. They urged Brenda to turn herself in. Unfortunately, Brenda had no intention of heeding these calls. Instead, she crossed the border into Mexico, where she remained hidden for months. The Dallas Police Department, FBI, and local Mexican authorities joined forces to locate her and bring her to justice. The exhaustive search for Brenda involved various resources and strategies. Detectives combed through surveillance footage, interviewed potential witnesses, and conducted thorough background checks. Their relentless efforts paid off 7 months later in April 2016, when Brenda was finally located in Mexico. With Brenda in custody, the authorities faced the challenge of extraditing her to the United States. However, there was one crucial condition that needed to be met. The United States had to promise that they would not seek the death penalty against her. After negotiations, the United States agreed to the conditions put forth by Mexico. As a result, Brenda was extradited to the USA to stay in trial for capital murder. The case against Brenda gained strength when Crystal Cortez made a plea deal with the prosecution. She signed an agreement to testify against Brenda in exchange for a reduced sentence. Crystal admitted to her involvement in the murder and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. In 2019, during Brenda's trial, Crystal testified that in September 2015, while Brenda was eating dinner with Jose at Chili's for an alibi, she and Christopher Love snuck into the parking garage at Kendra's apartment complex and awaited Kendra. When Kendra drove by in her white Toyota Camry, Crystal testified, Christopher got out of the car, shot Kendra, took her purse, and ran back to where Crystal was waiting in the Jeep. Brenda's defense attorney refuted Crystal's testimony and said that Brenda, being a mastermind behind a murder for hire, did not match her personality. The defense claimed that Crystal Cortez and Christopher Love planned to rob and kill Kendra after they heard Brenda badmouthing her, thinking Brenda would be an easy target to pin it on. After deliberations, the jury found Brenda guilty of capital murder. Brenda received a life sentence without parole. On October 31, 2018, Christopher Love was also found guilty of capital murder and was sentenced to death. Imagine the joy of a 13th birthday party, a celebration filled with laughter, cake, and the promise of adventure. But what if that joy was shattered in an instant? What if the very people entrusted to protect a child were hiding dark secrets? Meet Madeline Soto, a bright and spirited girl from Kissimmee, Florida. Just one day after her birthday celebration, she vanished without a trace, leaving her family and community in turmoil. As the last activities of her life started to swoop into place, investigators came to realize the haunting tales of betrayal and deception, which would mark a turning point in the lives of those involved. Prepare yourself for a journey through heartbreak and horror as we unravel the tragic tale of Madeline Soto, a story that serves as a haunting reminder of dangers that can hide behind closed doors and the profound impact of misplaced trust. On February 26, 2024, a seemingly ordinary day shattered into chaos for the Soto family. 13-year-old Madeline Soto had just celebrated her birthday, surrounded by her friends and family filled with dreams and hopes of the future. But as the sun set on that fateful day, Madeline would vanish without a trace, plunging her loved ones into a nightmare from which they may never awaken. In the days that followed, investigators uncovered a disturbing reality hidden beneath the surface of Madeline's life, a web of secrets and troubling dynamics that would lead to heartbreak and horror. The last person to see her was her mother's boyfriend, Stephen Stearns, who claimed he dropped her off at school that morning. However, it was obvious, especially as the search became more committed, that the entire tale was riddled with inconsistencies, and trust was the last concern on anyone's mind. What started off as helping locate a lost child immediately shifted to a nasty, detestable investigation filled with more than enough shocking information and staggering facts. The community rallied together, but with each passing hour, hope dwindled as dark truths began to emerge. Join us today as we explore the chilling case of Madeline Soto. Madeline Soto's life was woven with both joy and turmoil, shaped by the dynamics of her family. At just 13 years old, she lived with her mother, Jennifer Soto, in the Venetian Bay Village complex in Kissimmee, Florida. Their home, well filled with love, was not without its challenges. Jennifer, a dedicated mother, often found herself at odds with her daughter, leading to frequent arguments that left both feeling frustrated and misunderstood. Madeline was diagnosed with ADHD, which affected her ability to focus and contributed to her struggles in school. Teachers described her as a sweet girl, prone to distraction but possessing a kind heart. However, in the months leading up to her disappearance, friends began to notice a shift in her demeanor. Madeline often seemed sad and fatigued, sometimes crying without explanation. She confided in her friends about her mother's struggles with mental health, referring to Jennifer as bipolar and expressing feelings of isolation. Adding complexity to their relationship was the presence of Stephen Stearns, Jennifer's boyfriend. Though Madeline spoke affectionately about him, calling him stepfather and often reaching out for comfort during conflicts with her mother, the dynamics of the household were anything but simple. Stephen had taken on a fatherly role in Madeline's life. However, this arrangement raised eyebrows among those who knew them. In early 2024, Madeline began voicing an unsettling desire to escape her home life. She shared plans with her friends about building a house in the woods as soon as she turned 13, a dream that seemed innocent at first but took on a darker tone when viewed through the lens of her subsequent disappearance. As February 26th approached, a day that should have been filled with excitement following her birthday celebration, tensions were palpable within the Soto house. The morning began like any other. However, it would soon spiral into chaos that would change everything. Madeline's living situation was a blend of affection and conflict. While she cherished moments spent with Stephen and often sought his support during difficult times, the underlying issues within the household loomed large. As investigators began to retrace Madeline's last movements and dive deeper into her family dynamics, they would uncover shocking truths that hinted at the tragic fate awaiting this bright young girl. On February 26, 2024, the day began like any other. Jennifer Soto woke up early to the sound of her boyfriend, Stephen Stearns, taking their dog out for a walk. In her sleepy haze, she returned to the bed, blissfully unaware of the dark turn her day would take. As the morning filtered through the curtains, the family dynamics seemed normal, but beneath the surface lay tension and unspoken fears. Stephen drove Madeline to school that morning, but instead of dropping her off directly at Hunters Creek Middle School, he made a fateful decision to leave her at Peace United Methodist Church, conveniently located across the street. It was around 8:30 a.m. when he dropped her off. Surveillance footage later captured Madeline lingering in the church parking lot for several minutes. Her small figure was seen sitting on the ground, seemingly lost in thought. As time passed, she stood up and walked towards the school, but she never arrived. In those crucial moments, no one could have imagined that this would be the last time anyone would see Madeline. The innocence of a typical school day was shattered as she disappeared into thin air. At some point during the day, Stephen told Jennifer that he had factory his phone in an attempt to update it. As the clock ticked on and morning turned to afternoon, Madeline's absence began to raise alarms. Stephen's casual dismissal of his responsibility and Jennifer's obviousness to the danger lurking in their midst would soon come to haunt them both. Around 4:30 p.m., Jennifer Soto arrived at Hunters Creek Middle School, her heart filled with anticipation to pick up her daughter. However, as she scanned the crowd of students streaming out of school, a sinking feeling began to wash over her. Madeline was nowhere to be found. Concern quickly turned to panic when school administrators informed Jennifer that Madeline had never attended classes that day. The realization hit her. Something was terribly wrong. In a frantic attempt to locate her daughter, Jennifer searched nearby locations, including her mother's office, where she thought Madeline might have gone after school. As she drove through the familiar streets, anxiety gripped her heart. She checked every corner and called out Madeline's name, but there was no response. The world around her felt increasingly surreal as the minutes ticked by. After exhausting all possible locations and failing to find any sign of her daughter, Jennifer's desperation grew. She reached out to friends, hoping they had seen Madeline or could offer some insight into where she might be. Social media became a tool for outreach as she posted about Madeline's disappearance, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. As dusk approached and the sun dipped below the horizon, Jennifer realized that time was slipping away. With dread setting in her stomach, she made a difficult decision to report Madeline missing around 8 p.m. The weight of uncertainty bore down on her as she dialed 911, knowing that every passing moment could mean the difference between finding her daughter safe or facing an unimaginable tragedy. When Jennifer Soto finally dialed 911 to report her daughter missing around 8 p.m., the weight of her fear was palpable. The response from law enforcement, however, was not immediate. It took several hours for deputies to arrive at the scene, leaving Jennifer in a state of growing anxiety as she paced the school grounds, desperately hoping for news of Madeline. By the time officers responded, nearly 12 hours had passed since she last saw her daughter. As the deputies arrived, they began to gather information from Jennifer and Stephen Stearns, who had accompanied her. Their initial questions focused on Madeline's last known whereabouts and any potential leads that might help locate her. With each answer given by Jennifer and Stephen, investigators noticed inconsistencies that would later raise red flags about Stephen's involvement in Madeline's disappearance. The following day, February 27th, law enforcement launched an extensive search operation that would involve over 100 personnel from various agencies, including the Orange County Sheriff's Office and local volunteers from the community. K-9s were deployed to track Madeline's scent, while search teams combed through nearby parks, hiking trails, and wooded areas surrounding Hunters Creek Middle School. Search efforts were methodical and thorough. Officers utilized ATVs and horses to cover rough terrain that might be difficult for foot patrols. They scoured every inch of the area where Madeline was last seen, following tips and leads as they emerged. Volunteers joined in the search, handing out flyers bearing Madeline's picture and details about her disappearance, hoping to spark recognition from anyone who might have seen her. Despite their efforts, each passing hour brought with it a sense of urgency and dread. As investigators pieced together a timeline of Madeline's movements on that fateful day, they began to uncover unsettling truths that would lead them down a dark path, one that would ultimately reveal the tragic fate of this young girl. As the search for Madeline intensified, Jennifer Soto's heart raced with worry. In her desperate quest for answers, she noted with a sinking feeling that Madeline had left her phone at home, a common occurrence due to her forgetfulness associated with ADHD. It wasn't unusual for Madeline to misplace things, but this time, it felt ominous. The absence of her phone meant there would be no immediate way to track her movements or communicate with her. Determined to find any clues that could shed light on her daughter's whereabouts, Jennifer turned to Madeline's text messages. She scoured through her daughter's conversations, hoping to uncover something, anything, that might indicate where Madeline had gone or who she had been in contact with. There were no alarming texts, no hints of plans to run away, no signs of distress. As the investigation into Madeline Soto's disappearance unfolded, law enforcement quickly turned their attention to the last known individuals who had seen her, Jennifer, and her boyfriend, Stephen Stearns. The officers began their inquiry by interviewing both, eager to piece together the timeline of events leading up to Madeline's vanishing. Stephen claimed that he had dropped Madeline off in front of Peace United Methodist Church around 8:40 a.m. on February 26th, just a short walk from Hunters Creek Middle School. He described how she exited the vehicle and headed toward the school, seemingly unbothered as she walked away. However, as investigators began to dig deeper into his account, inconsistencies began to surface. During his interviews with police, Stephen's demeanor raised eyebrows. While he presented a calm exterior, investigators noted subtle signs of nervousness in his responses. He provided consent for law enforcement to search his phone, but insisted that he had accidentally performed a factory reset on it the same day Madeline went missing. This claim struck investigators as suspicious. The timing was far too convenient. As they continued to question him, they learned that a license plate reader had captured Stephen's vehicle in various locations throughout the morning, yet none of those locations aligned with his account of dropping Madeline off at school. Instead of following a direct route to Hunters Creek Middle School, his car was seen making unusual turns and detours. Investigators pressed Stephen on his inconsistencies. They questioned why he would drop Madeline off at a church instead of directly at school, especially given that classes started at 9:30 a.m. His explanations seemed rehearsed and lacked clarity. As they probed further into his timeline and movements that morning, it became increasingly clear that something about his story didn't add up. The tension in the room was palpable as investigators confronted him with their findings. They were aware that Stephen was now not only a person of interest, but also the last known individual to have seen Madeline alive. With each question posed, the weight of the suspicion grew heavier upon him, setting the stage for what would come next in this unfolding tragedy. 2 days after Madeline's disappearance, the investigation took a shocking turn. On February 28th, law enforcement officials arrested Stephen Stearns, but not for anything directly related to Madeline's case. Instead, he was taken into custody on charges of sex battery and possession of explicit child material. The arrest sent ripples through the community, raising questions about the man who had been the last person to see Madeline alive. As investigators delved deeper into Stephen's background, they uncovered disturbing evidence that would change the course of the investigation entirely. Upon examining his phone, authorities found horrific content, images and videos so graphic that they left seasoned detectives shaken. This material was not just troubling, it was deeply unsettling and pointed to a pattern of abuse that had likely been occurring within the family home. Stephen claimed that he had accidentally performed a factory reset on his phone on the same day Madeline went missing. However, investigators found this timing to be suspiciously convenient. The reset erased crucial data that could have provided insight into his actions and whereabouts on the morning of Madeline's disappearance. As law enforcement sifted through the remnants of what was left on Stephen's device, they discovered numerous explicit images and videos depicting child sexual abuse. The content was so graphic that it made stomachs turn, detailing acts that no child should ever endure. The investigators noted that many of these files appeared to have been taken inside the family home, raising alarming questions about what had transpired in those walls. The sheriff's office stated that they observed distinct patterns in some of the images, clothing, and items that matched those belonging to Madeline. This revelation painted a horrifying picture of a man who had not only been entrusted with caring for a young girl, but who may also have been her abuser. With this newfound evidence, Stephen was named the primary suspect in Madeline's disappearance. While he was not initially charged with her abduction, investigators were increasingly convinced that his actions were intertwined with her fate. As details emerged about his disturbing behavior and the content found on his phone, it became clear that Madeline's disappearance was far more sinister than anyone had anticipated. Stephen's arrest marked a pivotal moment in the investigation, a shift from searching for a missing girl to uncovering a web of deception and horror that would ultimately lead to deeper inquiries into what really happened on that fateful day. On March 1st, 2024, authorities received a tip that would lead them to a wooded area off Hickory Tree Road in Osceola County. As research teams scoured the terrain, they stumbled upon a discovery that would shatter any remaining hope. Madeline's body was found concealed beneath a layer of dry grass and hay. The condition of her body was heart-wrenching. She was identified by distinctive clothing, a green hoodie and blue jeans, similar to what she had been wearing when she disappeared. The sight of her lifeless form painted a haunting picture of the tragedy that had unfolded in those fateful days. As investigators worked meticulously to gather evidence from the scene, they noted signs of decomposition on one side of her face and hands. The medical examiner's investigation observed that Madeline's body showed signs consistent with foul play, further solidifying the belief that she had been murdered. This discovery marked a pivotal moment in the investigation. The transition from searching for a missing girl to recovering the body of a young child was an emotional blow not only for law enforcement, but for the entire community. As news spread about the recovery, sorrow and outrage filled the hearts of those who had rallied together in hopes of finding Madeline alive. During a critical news conference, investigators shared their growing confidence that 13-year-old Madeline Soto had been killed at her Kissimmee home before her body was moved. Sheriff Mina revealed that video evidence captured Stephen Stearns discarding items into a dumpster at the apartment complex around 7:35 a.m. on February 26th, the very day Madeline was reported missing. In that dumpster, authorities discovered Madeline's backpack, her school-issued laptop, and a white crock that matched another found in her mother's bedroom. This evidence contradicted Stephen's claim that he had dropped Madeline off near school that morning. Instead, investigators stated they had evidence indicating that Madeline was never dropped off at all. They believed she was already dead by the time Stephen was seen driving away. Sheriff Mina emphasized, "We have evidence that shows Stephen Stearns returning to the complex with Madeline visible in that vehicle. We believe she was already dead at that time." Investigative reports indicated that Madeline was most likely killed in her home, further complicating the narrative surrounding her disappearance. The cause of death of 13-year-old Madeline was officially ruled as a homicide by the medical examiner, who determined that she died from strangulation. This conclusion came after her body was discovered in a wooded area on March 1st. On March 2nd, 2024, Stephen Stearns waived his first appearance in Osceola County Court, opting to be represented solely by his attorney. The judge denied him bond, reflecting the seriousness of the charges he faced. In a significant misstep, the Osceola County Sheriff's accidentally posted a confidential crime scene photo on social media. The image depicted clothing consistent with what Madeline was believed to have been wearing when she went missing. The sheriff's office later issued an apology for the error, acknowledging that the photo should not have been made public. On March 6th, court records revealed that Stephen was accused of sexually abusing Madeline for years, despite his attempts to erase incriminating evidence from his phone. Investigators recovered files showing explicit content related to Madeline dating back to 2022. This evidence included disturbing images and videos that depicted her in compromising situations. Additionally, police interviewed a former acquaintance of Stephen who noted that he seemed more upset about his bond with Madeline than his relationship with her mother. This raised further concerns about the dynamics within the household and Stephen's potential motivations. As the investigation progressed, it became increasingly clear that authorities were building a strong case against Stephen. The combination of video evidence recovered, digital files, and witness testimonies painted a troubling picture of abuse and manipulation that would ultimately lead to serious legal repercussions for him. On March 6th, detectives interviewed Stephen's parents who expressed disapproval of his relationship with Madeline Soto's mother, citing concerns over drug use and the negative influence it had on their son. They described a troubling dynamic where both Stephen and Jennifer would often sleep excessively, exacerbating their mental health issues. Notably, during the interview, Stephen's mother mentioned finding the torso of a sex doll in his bedroom, raising further suspicions about his behavior. On the same day, detectives also spoke with two roommates of Jennifer Soto. One roommate reported hearing significant noises coming from the upstairs bedroom, where Stephen and Madeline had reportedly been sleeping alone. This raised questions about what might have transpired that night, especially since Jennifer had assured her roommate that Stephen would not harm Madeline. After several hearings and investigation developments, on March 12, 2024, the Orange Osceola State Attorney's Office announced that it had filed 60 counts against Stephen Stearns. These charges included 8 counts of sexual battery on a child under 12, 5 counts of sexual battery with a child 12 to 18, familial custodial authority, 7 counts of lewd or lascivious molestation, and 40 counts of unlawful possession of materials depicting sexual performance by a child. The following day, detectives spoke with Madeline's best friend, who revealed that Madeline had a routine of texting her every morning. However, on the day she went missing, there were no messages from her, raising further alarm. By March 21st, Kissimmee Betty Holland held a news conference to discuss the investigation's progress. She described it as very intricate and stated that everyone close to Madeline was considered a suspect until proven otherwise. This included Madeline's mother, Jennifer Soto. As the investigation continued, the District 9 Medical Examiner's Office announced that the autopsy report for Madeline could not be released due to state statutes deeming it confidential. However, audio from 911 calls related to the case were made public, featuring two different voices speaking with dispatchers. On April 10th, while in jail, Stephen called his father, expressing remorse and uncertainty about who was responsible for Madeline's fate. He stated, I would never have wanted that for Madeline," suggesting an unawareness of the gravity of the situation. As the investigation into Madeline's tragic disappearance and subsequent demise progressed, significant developments unfolded. On April 11, 2024, Stephen's father contacted law enforcement after discovering a hard drive in his storage unit. This hard drive was linked to Stephen, who previously claimed it was in his bedroom. The following day, police retrieved this hard drive, along with 2 USB drives. By April 22nd, investigators announced that while the hard drive contained no evidence, one of the USB drives held over 35,000 images of child pornography. On April 24th, a grand jury indicted Stephen on first-degree murder charges in connection with Madeline's death. Kissimmee Police Chief Betty Holland stated that evidence indicated Stephen had made calculated efforts to dispose of Madeline's belongings and conceal her body before she was reported missing. The state attorney's officer later announced that they would seek the death penalty against him. As court proceedings continued, detectives interviewed Madeline's mother again on April 18th. During the interview, she revealed that she had returned home late to find Madeline and Stephen alone together. She recounted allowing them to sleep in the same bed due to her trust in him, raising questions about the dynamic within their household. By June 10th, prosecutors officially sought the death penalty against Stephen Stearns. The community remained on edge as they awaited trial proceedings, grappling with the horror of what had transpired. The public reaction was one of heartbreak and anger. Vigils were held in Madeline's memory, and community members rallied for justice. The case sparked discussions about child safety and the need for vigilance against potential threats lurking in everyday life. As the legal process continues, Madeline Soto's story serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of protecting our children and ensuring that their voices are heard. The quest for justice remains ongoing as investigators and community members alike seek answers to a tragedy that has left an indelible mark on their lives. Amanda and James Coley lived in a charming neighborhood on South Bellagio Drive, a cul-de-sac in St. Augustine, Florida. The couple had a son and daughter, and to the outside world, they appeared to be the perfect family living the American dream. Those who knew Amanda described her as confident in the life of the party. She was always surrounded by friends and had a vibrant personality. James, too, was personable and easy to befriend. He was involved in coaching his children's sports teams, and everyone thought he was a great dad. However, as time passed, cracks started to appear in their marriage. James had always had a jealous side, and Amanda's outgoing nature and the way she lit up every room she walked into made him insecure. Her ability to make friends and attract attention further fueled his insecurities. Matters worsened when James began to drink heavily. His jealous tendencies became even difficult to control when he was under the influence of alcohol. It became a common occurrence for James to verbally abuse Amanda, blaming her for the problems in their marriage. Amanda believed it was important for their children to have their mother and father in their lives, so she and James strived to make their strained relationship work. Despite Amanda's best efforts, James' jealous behavior did not subside. It continued to manifest in various ways, including constantly monitoring Amanda's movements, controlling her social interactions, and questioning her fidelity. She attempted to navigate these challenging waters for the sake of their children, but her efforts were met with increasing aggression and intimidation from James. The toxic environment created by James' behavior had a profound impact on Amanda's son and daughter. They witnessed their parents' struggles, and the emotional turmoil began to affect their well-being. This constant tension and fear became unbearable for Amanda and her children, and she realized that something had to change. After careful consideration, Amanda made the difficult decision to end her marriage with James. She knew that staying in the relationship was no longer a viable option, not only for herself, but also for the well-being of her children. The decision to leave was not easy, but Amanda was convinced it was the best choice for her and her children. When Amanda informed James of her decision, he was devastated. He did not want to lose her. However, Amanda's decision was final, and she was determined to create a safe and nurturing environment for her son and daughter. James moved out of the home he and Amanda once shared on South Bellagio Drive, but he visited the home often. There were times when James was over at the house that he and Amanda engaged in relations, but Amanda alleged that she only did so to comply with James to keep him from getting upset and hurting her. Amanda started dating a man, Lamar Doberly, but kept it a secret from James. Despite their separation, James' jealous tendencies did not subside. While Amanda was away one weekend, James decided to act upon his jealousy. He broke into Amanda's home and carried out a disturbing act of violence. James gathered all of Amanda's clothing and burned them in the backyard. After that incident, Amanda officially filed for divorce and sought an injunction from the court. This injunction included a provision that stated James needed to stay away from her home. In her injunction, Amanda explicitly stated that if James found out she had a boyfriend, he would kill her. She knew first the lengths James would go in order to control her, and she had seen firsthand the consequences of his jealous rages. Feeling threatened by Amanda's independence, James took drastic measures to spy on her. James sought the help of his neighbors living on South Bellagio Drive. He asked them to keep an eye on Amanda's activities and inform him if they noticed any suspicious activity, particularly men around her house. In August 2015, Mike Dickens, one of James' neighbors, sent him a text message containing a screenshot of a shirtless man mowing Amanda's lawn. This text sent James into a furious rage. He immediately confronted Amanda, demanding to know the identity of the man in the photograph. Amanda assured James that the man was merely someone she had hired to cut the grass. However, James was not convinced and continued to harass Amanda through text messages. James turned to Mike Dickens, who had provided him the initial image, for support. In his message to Mike, James referred to Amanda as an evil person, a cheater, and the worst person on the planet. He expressed his anger, stating she will pay for her perceived infidelity. On August 27th at 4:41 a.m., James drove to Amanda's house on South Bellagio Drive. Amanda, however, was not home. Frustrated by her absence, James decided to enter her house. Once inside, he embarked on a destructive rampage, breaking every television and destroying the furniture and walls. As James made his way through Amanda's bedroom, he stumbled upon a collection of men's clothing and adult toys. These items did not belong to him, and he immediately became enraged. In a fit of anger, he began incessantly calling Amanda, informing her about the intimate items he had discovered inside her bedroom. At 8:34 a.m., James left a voicemail on Amanda's phone, calling her disgusting. His message was filled with anger and accusations, further escalating the situation. Just half an hour after leaving the voicemail, James arrived at St. Johns County Courthouse for an appearance on the injunction violation that Amanda filed against him for an earlier incident. During the court hearing for the injunction violation, James pleaded no contest to violating the terms of their protective order. Unaware of the mess James had just made at Amanda's house, the judge took into consideration James' lack of criminal history and decided to impose an alternate sentence rather than send him to jail. The judge ordered James to attend anger management classes and placed him on 1-year unsupervised probation. James, dressed in his work clothes, appeared to accept this decision and leave the courthouse. However, his plans took a turn for the worse. Before leaving the courthouse, James called Amanda and left another voice message. This time, he pleaded with her to listen to him and call him back. James referred to Amanda as baby and expressed his desire for reconciliation. Amanda finally answered the phone and they engaged in a 14-minute conversation. The exact content of this conversation remains unknown, but it significantly impacted James' actions. Instead of heading to work as planned, James changed his actions. He headed to a gas station. There, he filled up his tank and purchased several cans of beer. At approximately 10 to 11 a.m., James started his journey towards South Bellagio Drive, where Amanda lived, armed with 2 loaded handguns. Amanda returned home to a devastating scene. James had not only damaged her home, but also caused her immense emotional distress. Alarmed and upset, Amanda sought solace in the arms of her boyfriend, Lamar, and was joined by 2 friends, Lindy Robbins and Rachel Hendricks. Visibly shaken and in tears, Amanda reached out to the sheriff's department and requested assistance. However, after careful consideration, she decided against pressing charges against James. Amanda wanted to avoid seeing James go to jail and be separated from their children. Since Amanda denied the officers' help, they left Amanda's home. Unbeknownst to Amanda, James had already made his way to the vicinity of her home. He parked his vehicle outside the residence and stealthily approached the front door. Amanda, Lamar, Lindy, and Rachel were gathered in the living room kitchen area. Without hesitation, James opened fire on the house, screaming, "Where is he?" Recognizing the danger, Lamar reacted quickly and escaped. Security camera footage from the South Bellagio Drive residence captured Lamar's desperate dash to a nearby house. In the chaos that ensued, Amanda, Lindy, and Rachel found themselves caught in the crosshairs of James' rage. Bullets pierced through the walls, sending shockwaves of fear through the room. As the smoke cleared, the sound of silence engulfed the home. The 3 women sought refuge in Amanda's bedroom and hid inside the master bathroom suite. While hiding, Amanda courageously decided to call 911. However, things took a deadly turn when James could be heard outside the bathroom door, demanding Amanda open it. Amanda desperately pleaded for James to stop, knowing he was looking for her boyfriend, Lamar. She knew that revealing Lamar's location could put him in grave danger. Unfortunately, the situation escalated further, and the 911 dispatcher heard a barrage of gunshots and screaming. The dispatcher's worst nightmare was quickly realized as Amanda's cries for help abruptly ended. James had violently entered the bathroom and opened fire on Amanda, killing her. After shooting Amanda, James turned his attention to the closet where Lindy and Rachel were hiding. Lindy was also on the phone with 911 and kneeling in the back of the closet. Rachel, standing in the corner, prepared herself for the worst. James shot the closet door down. In a moment of pure instinct, Rachel took advantage of the situation and snuck behind the door as James walked in, her heart pounding. Rachel heard Lindy cry out in horror, "Oh my God," as James raised his firearm and pointed it directly at her head. In an instant, James pulled the trigger, and Lindy's life came to an end. Rachel ran out of Amanda's home and sought refuge at a neighbor's house. There, she hid in a closet and called 911, expressing her fear that James would eventually find her. Officers arrived at the scene and swiftly launched an investigation, trying to piece together the sequence of events that led to Amanda's death. However, their search proved challenging as James had already fled the scene. Hours after committing the heinous crime, James reached out to his father, confessing that he could not handle the situation any longer. He revealed that Amanda had been relentlessly trying to put him in jail, leaving him no choice but to take drastic measures. James expressed remorse and claimed he tried his best to resolve the situation peacefully. James drove to his sister's house, where he picked up some of his belongings before leaving and heading north. The hunt for James only lasted for a single day before he was apprehended in Virginia. His arrest came as a result of a call from a woman who reported a suspicious car with Florida tags driving aggressively and attempting to run her off the road. Traveling with 3 small children, this woman was terrified for her safety. In response, an officer made a traffic stop and James was arrested. He was found to be intoxicated but did not resist. At the police station in Virginia, James was taken into an interrogation room where Samantha English, a detective from Florida, was there to question him about Amanda and Lindy's murders. Despite driving 10 hours to interview James, Detective Samantha English's efforts proved futile after he insisted on seeking an attorney. Because the nature of Amanda and Lindy's death was so horrifying, the prosecution considered seeking the death penalty against James Coley. To secure a conviction and a death penalty, the prosecution had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that James had committed premeditated murder and that he had several opportunities to change his mind. Premeditation refers to the perpetrator's intent to kill before carrying out the act. In this case, the prosecution had to demonstrate that James had planned to kill Amanda and Lindy prior to the murder. The prosecutor had to present evidence showcasing that James had formulated a plan to kill Amanda and Lindy, that he had intentionally carried out the killings, and that he had knowingly disregarded any opportunities to change his mind. They needed to gather sufficient evidence and build a strong case against James to ensure justice was served for the two victims. James, who was being held at the Duffield Regional Jail awaiting trial for the murder of Amanda, maintained contact with his family throughout his incarceration. These phone calls were recorded, providing detectives with valuable insights into his mindset. Through these recordings, the true nature of James' cold-hearted nature was exposed. In various phone calls, James expressed his intention to keep his son and daughter away from Amanda's family. James made it evident that he aimed to assert control over his children's lives. Moreover, the recordings revealed James' confidence in securing a manslaughter conviction. He spoke about the possibility of being released from prison in less than 20 years, even though he was facing charges for murder. An inmate at the Duffield Regional Jail came forward to speak to the prosecution. The inmate, Andrew Cherry, claimed that he had conversations with James in which James expressed that Amanda and Lindy had gotten what they deserved when he shot them. According to Andrew, James had no shortage of mean and spiteful things to say about his dead wife. James blamed Amanda for the failure of their marriage and expressed satisfaction in ending her life. The inmate's testimony provided the prosecution with a crucial insight into the motive behind James' actions. It suggested that the motive for murder was not merely an act of violence, but a deep-rooted desire for revenge. James had harbored resentment towards Amanda and sought to punish her for perceived wrongs. During the summer of 2018, James Coley found himself on trial. James made a shocking admission to the court on the first day of the trial. He informed the judge that he understood the strategy devised by the defense was to save his life. However, he also stated that by accepting this defense, he would be admitting to discharging a firearm that resulted in the deaths of two people. James' defense team presented their case to the jury during their opening arguments. They emphasized that this case was not about assigning blame, but rather about understanding the why and the how behind the tragic events. The defense argued that a man like James, who professed to love his family above all else, could not have done this. According to the defense, James was under the influence of Ambien at the time of the shooting and urged the jury to consider this mitigating factor. According to James' defense attorneys, this incident was not a case of first-degree murder. The attorneys argued that there was an element of diminished responsibility due to James' state of intoxication. They maintained that James was not in his right mind at the time of the shooting and lost control of his actions. Rachel Hendricks, who had witnessed James' rampage firsthand, was the first to testify. She recounted the horrifying events that unfolded on the evening of the murder. Lamar Dobrel, Amanda's boyfriend, was the second witness to testify. He said he became convinced that James was targeting him, prompting him to run from Amanda's house as soon as he heard gunshots. During Lamar's cross-examination, the defense attorney sought to cast doubt on his testimony. The attorney asked if Lamar was aware that James and Amanda had been engaging in a secret relationship. Lamar denied having any knowledge of this. However, the defense's questioning took a controversial turn when the attorney mentioned Amanda's adult toys. The prosecution was outraged, feeling that the defense was attempting to tarnish Amanda's reputation and paint her as promiscuous. The public sentiment mirrored the prosecution's view, as people took to social media and attacked the defense attorney for victim-blaming Amanda. In a later interview, the defense attorney claimed that his intention was not to victim-shame Amanda, but to save his client's life. He argued that exploring all aspects of the case, including the intimate details of Amanda's life, was necessary to understand the situation comprehensively. However, the public remained divided, questioning the defense attorney's tactics and motives. After the prosecution presented their case in court, it was time for the defense to present their side of the story. One key decision for the defense team was whether James would testify in his defense. The defense had to consider the potential risks and benefits of James taking the witness stand. On one hand, the defense believed James could gain jury sympathies by expressing his side of the story. James could humanize himself and appeal to the jury's emotions by explaining his actions and emotions. However, on the other hand, the defense knew that James would face a grueling cross-examination by the prosecution. This cross-examination would expose any inconsistencies in his testimony and could raise further questions about his guilt. Ultimately, the defense decided not to put James on the witness stand. This decision was not made lightly, as the defense knew that it would deprive the defense of the opportunity to present their case firsthand. However, the defense believed that the risks of James testifying outweighed the potential rewards. Instead of calling James a witness, the defense decided to call Rhonda, James's sister. Rhonda's testimony played a significant role in the defense's strategy. The defense aimed to show that while James was trying to salvage his marriage, Amanda was already seeking a divorce. During her testimony, Rhonda became emotional as she spoke about her role in her brother's divorce. She acknowledged acting as a go-between for James and Amanda, attempting to mediate and find a resolution to their marital problems. During the defense's closing arguments, they argued that an emotional roller coaster led to the deaths of Amanda Coley and Linda Dobbins. They contended that it was not a premeditated crime and urged the jury to find James Coley guilty of second-degree murder. The defense alleged that James snapped and committed the murders in a state of temporary insanity. However, the prosecution presented a different theory during their closing arguments. They argued that James committed to a deep-seated resentment and anger that built up over time. According to the prosecution, James killed Amanda and Linda because Amanda rejected him and his inability to accept no for an answer. Amanda and Linda's loved ones attended every day of James's trial, wearing purple, the color for domestic violence victims and survivors. After the jury deliberated, they returned with a guilty verdict on every count. Tammy Malone, Amanda's sister, spoke during the trial's penalty phase, sharing her heartfelt memories of her dear sister. Tammy described Amanda as smart, funny, kind, and compassionate. She let the court know that Amanda's life mattered to many people in many different ways. Linda's husband, Chris Dobbins, also testified during the sentencing hearing. He spoke about how he left an empty blue chair for Linda at his son's sports games. The blue chair symbolized the void left in their family's life. The courtroom was somber as Chris recounted his memories of his wife. His voice filled with pain and grief. He described the impact Linda had on their family. It was obvious that the loss of these two women had left an unforgettable mark on the lives of their families and friends. During the penalty phase, James's defense attorney attempted to argue that James was under the influence of Ambien at the time of the killings. The defense argued that this impairment prevented him from effectively dealing with the situation. To support this claim, the defense presented evidence suggesting that when James arrived at the court for his injunction violation hearing, he was already impaired. They argued that his confused behavior and mannerisms were indicative of his drug-induced state. However, in rebuttal, the prosecution played CCTV footage from that morning which depicted James's behavior during his court appearance. The video showed James acting perfectly normal without any signs of intoxication or impairment. Furthermore, the judge who had spoken directly to James that morning also took the stand during the sentencing hearing. The judge stated that during their interaction, he did not notice any signs of intoxication. Rather, James appeared lucid and composed. This testimony further undermined the defense's argument that James was impaired at the time of the killings. James's sister Crystal took the stand to testify on his behalf. Crystal painted a different picture of her brother, depicting him as a loving and caring father. She presented pictures of James spending time with his children during happier times, emphasizing the joy and warmth they experienced together. The defense's strategy was clear: to humanize James and remind the jury of the importance of family. By emphasizing his role as a loving father, they hoped to create a softer image and reduce the severity of his crimes. During the defense's closing arguments, the attorneys argued that if jurors were to sentence James to life without parole, he would still face the same fate as the death penalty, as life in prison would mean he would never be released. Florida law requires that 12 jurors unanimously agree on the death penalty in order for it to be applied. Even if one juror holds out, the sentence cannot be imposed. However, based on the information uncovered during the trial, the jurors determined that James deserved the ultimate punishment. They suggested that he should be sentenced to death for his heinous crimes. The judge ultimately agreed with the jury. Amanda's family and Linda's loved ones cried with relief and sadness. While justice had been served, there was still a profound sense of loss. On one side of the courtroom, James' supporters sat stunned. As the bailiffs led James away, he smiled and winked at his supporters. The story of Amanda and Lindy's murder serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence. Amanda's loved ones hope her story serves as a cautionary tale, inspiring others in similar situations to protect themselves. Despite Amanda's efforts to seek justice through the courts, James still managed to reach her. Amanda's family and friends hope that her story serves as a stark reminder of the severity of domestic violence, urging people to take the issue seriously and not dismiss it as mere arguments or misunderstandings. Any act of aggression within a relationship, regardless of how long a couple has been together, is deserving of attention and intervention. The violence can escalate rapidly, leaving good people like Amanda and Lindy dead. Domestic violence does not discriminate, affecting individuals from all walks of life. It does not solely manifest in young couples or those experiencing rocky relationships. Even couples who have been together for decades are not immune to the destructive power of abuse. Through Amanda's story, we are encouraged to break the silence surrounding domestic violence and seek help when needed. By raising awareness and advocating for change, we can prevent future tragedies and ensure that no person has to experience the pain and loss of losing a loved one to domestic violence.